Most people say that they prefer boredom over pain. Seems obvious, right? Boredom is just nothing, where pain is actually bad. But when researchers tested this, they found the opposite. In a 2014 study, participants were asked to just sit in a room with the express intent and goal to do nothing, just to think. No phones, no distractions, no stimulants, just their mind. The only alternative to this was to administer themselves an electric shock that they previously said they were paid to avoid. And yet, 67% of men and 25% of women shocked themselves. That is no joke. That's boredom fighting against pain and winning. And let's be real, that study was conducted in 2014. 12 years from then, those numbers are probably increased. I think that the interesting question this raises is, number one, what is boredom actually? And number two, why does it scare us so much? So let's begin. Boredom can be split into two subgroups, unstructured boredom and structured boredom. Now structured boredom I'll explain further down the video, but unstructured boredom is the frustration that occurs when one has the desire for attention, but nothing to attach the attention onto, nothing to latch it onto. And this is because humans are goal-directed attentional systems. Our brains are built to focus on problems, people, objects, persons. And when these disappear, the mind doesn't rest, it panics. And this is why pain can be preferable to boredom, because pain does something that boredom doesn't. It forces the attention. It makes the mind have a goal, a target, the pain. And that's why pain can be preferable to boredom, because at least pain, however unpleasant it might be, resolves the uncertainty, which might be worse. When external stimulation disappears, the mind switches to something called the default mode network. This network governs self-referential thought, future planning, social comparison, moral self-evaluation, even wasted potential and embarrassing moments. And that's why when people are bored, they never think about nothing. They think about those embarrassing memories, that wasted potential, those unfinished arguments with themselves, or the problems that they're avoiding. Sometimes the life they thought they'd have by now. That's why boredom can be scary, because if you have any problems that you're avoiding, anything that you want to avoid, boredom doesn't create them, but it removes the escape from them. It removes the distraction. And that's why pain can sometimes be preferable, because pain can give us meaning or purpose. Boredom strips that away and shows us what we have without it. Evolutionarily, boredom likely served a purpose. When our environment ceased to be rewarding, boredom pushed us to explore. It was a signal to move, to find, to change something. The problem is that now, when we get bored, we don't explore new territory. We explore the For You page, we explore TikTok, and this is where our dopamine gets hijacked. And this is especially dangerous and leaves us vulnerable because our brains still use this system. We still crave this novelty, only the novelty now is cheap, endless and engineered. And this leads us to the scariest part, social dopamine hijacking. Today we live in a world of constant stimulation. Apps, adverts, food branding, notifications, all of it is designed to raise our baseline expectations of reward. Which is why, when that stimulation drops, it feels worse than we should. Worse than it did 300 years ago, without the internet, without TikTok. And this is why, when we get bored, it's almost like we get withdrawal symptoms. We get restlessness, irritability, craving, because we're not just bored, we're below the baseline. And this is what leads people to shock themselves. Not with electric shocks, but with scrolling, binge eating, gambling, drinking, smoking, and even outrage. Anything to fill that void and bring us back to our baseline dopamine expectations. And often, as with the examples previously mentioned, the means by which we escape boredom are more harmful than the boredom itself. And here's where people might go wrong. They might assume that boredom is intrinsically good or intrinsically bad when it isn't. Boredom is instrumental. It matters what you do with it and how you create boredom. It can be good or it can be bad, and the key distinction is unstructured versus structured boredom. Unstructured boredom is simply just no stimulation, no goal, nothing. Just you and your noise. There's no frame, there's no horizon, there's no goal, there's no idea, it's just you. And that's what the experiment created. It's an attentional vacuum, and that's why people prefer pain. Structured boredom, however, is still a low stimulation environment, but with a spark, with a prompt, with an idea, a time limit, something like this. And some examples could include a long journey with a podcast, a slow lecture on a decently interesting topic, or simply just sitting with yourself for 10 minutes and thinking on one topic. It's still low stimulation and it still can be boring, but your mind is a scaffold to fall back on, to build off of. Structured boredom, when done correctly, can be incredibly beneficial because it trains the things that modern life erodes. Firstly, it fosters creativity because the mind is forced to create its own stimulation instead of consuming it. Secondly, it allows you to self-reflect without falling into a spiral of worry, sense of waste, regret, anxiety, fear. It allows you to think, what are some bad choices that I made in my past? What are some good choices I can make in my future? Where do I want to be realistically in the next 6 months? These frameworks give us a chance to self-reflect and improve our life in the future just by being bored, and we don't fall into a spiral of regret and anxiety and worry. Thirdly, it fosters an increase in metacognition. We learn to notice how we think, what assumptions we carry, when we jump to conclusions too early, and good patterns in our thinking. And lastly, and I think this is very needed with the dopamine epidemic in the world right now, it fosters cognitive discipline. You have to sit with a thought for 10 minutes maybe, with no immediate return. That's discipline at the most foundational level, and it will be uncomfortable to begin, but nothing good comes without discomfort. So boredom isn't the enemy. It's our relationship to the boredom that matters. If 10 or 15 minutes of boredom is painful to you, then that's not a sign of failure, but of deconditioning. And like any form of training, discomfort is the cost of growth. Because when we live in a world where it's designed to steal our attention and hijack our dopamine, learning to sit with our minds isn't indulgence, it's mental hygiene. And remember, if you begin to try and sit with your thoughts with one topic for 10-15 minutes and it's uncomfortable, it's painful, just know it's not just pain, but investment in your future mind. Thank you.